This video will introduce you to the new draft education and training Trailblazer standards. I need to let you know though, because of constraints on running time on videos like this and because you're busy people, we need to keep the length of this fairly short. So I'm going to run through this briskly, but with the understanding that on YouTube you will be able to stop the video at various points to look at information in more detail. Okay, so first of all, who are we? Well, we are a group that was convened by Joe North, the Executive Director of In Touch Care. I, by the way, am Ian Grayling, Executive Director of MSET, and I'm Vice Chair of this group. The Trailblazer group is a cross-section, fairly diverse cross-section of employers of teachers within the education and training sector, and together we have been developing draft standards for new apprenticeships for staff involved in teaching, training, and in sort of allied roles within the education and training sector. I should also say that I'm going to use the term teacher as shorthand, and please understand that it does in no way mean that we're sort of taking a FE centric approach to this. And if you were to have a look at this list of representative organisations on our Trailblazer leadership group, I think that will speak for itself. It's also worth noting that we've had a lot of support from the Education and Training Foundation, and our original bid was endorsed by AELP, AOC and HOLEX. Now, the process that we've, or the journey, if you like, that we've gone through starts very much with the Richard Review of apprenticeships, and in particular, the requirement that was accepted by the government that new Trailblazer apprenticeship programs should be developed by employers rather than training providers. So in our particular situation, we're talking about employers of teachers, and it's quite important to understand that that's where we're coming from. So these standards have been defined, as you saw from the leadership group, by employers of teachers rather than providers of initial teacher education. So the Trailblazer standards are employer-led, and perhaps it's useful just very quickly to explain what we mean by standards here. These standards are not qualifications, but the qualifications in teacher training, that's the award in education training, certificate and diploma, which I'm sure you're aware have replaced the kettles. The petals, kettles and dettles, they are included within these specifications. Further, these standards are not intended to be the same as professional standards, such as those that have been developed by the Education and Training Foundation that replaced the earlier ones created by LLUK. However, anybody following these Trailblazer standards will be meeting those professional standards, and they are mapped in or referenced in. So what are Trailblazer standards? Well, they, in terms of our sector, define what employers of teachers within the sector expect of their teaching staff. So they list the knowledge, skills, behaviours that define professionalism for teachers, trainers, tutors, and the like within the sector. The process that we've gone through started in October last year. We had nearly weekly, well, most often weekly meetings, virtual and active, to define a set of standards which went out to sector-wide consultation around about Christmas time, which was clearly not good timing. And the response from the sector was poor, or not very comprehensive in terms of its coverage. And we were originally intending to submit these standards to the Department of Business Innovation and Skills in February, but we had a very late last-minute flurry of feedback which caused us to reconsider and to postpone submission until the June panel. And this video and the event that we held in London on the 13th of April marked another month-long period of sector-wide consultation. The process is separated into two phases with a degree of overlap between them. The first phase is simply to define the standards themselves, which is what we are presenting to you at this point. But slightly overlapping that, we in phase 2 are required to develop an assessment plan and have invited some awarding organisations to advise us on how best to do that, and those are City and Guilds and OCR. We also have HEIs represented in our leadership group. The key thing about assessment of these standards is that they should be independent and should make use of synoptic assessment, whereby we avoid fragmenting the knowledge, skills and behaviours and look at the whole aspect of professionalism in a more holistic way in real professional practice. Okay, so why do we actually need apprenticeships in education and training? Well, there are a number of reasons why we consider this is useful to the sector. Firstly, we need to consider particular drivers which are very current at the moment. One being CAVTIL, the Commission on Adult Vocational Teaching and Learning, which has highlighted a number of, eight in fact, features of effective vocational teaching and learning. You might want to freeze this and have a look through it, but I'm going to focus on some key aspects of this. And really what shines out from this is an emphasis on authentic or realistic learning. So learning which is taking place in real or simulated settings, but thoroughly reflects current standards within the workplace, the use of technology in the workplace, collaborative or team-based working practices, and assessment which is mirrors the culture of that organisation or sector. Another key driver for the leadership group, the Trailblazer leadership group, has been the FELTAG report, looking at how well the sector is exploiting or using digital technologies, communication technologies to support teaching and learning. The graphic in the report is quite interesting and encourages us to reflect on where we believe we are in the use of technologies in relation to, say, the school sector, higher education or industry. Also point out that it's not just a technology issue in the sense that, yes, we needs to be made up in terms of the teacher's fluency with current technologies and how to use them safely. But they also pick up on something called the Whitehead Review in 2013, where they suggest that the challenge is often more to do with the changes necessary in terms of teachers when they introduce technology, because technology enables the learner to learn relatively independently, and that can sometimes feel like a loss of control for the teacher, and they may effectively fear it. Another important driver for us, although it's not something that is nevertheless important, is to recognise that teacher training within our sector is very poorly funded. Teacher training in the school sector is very well resourced. By introducing an apprenticeship approach to teacher training, the training our teachers, both perhaps initial and continuing. It opens up avenues of funding which we wouldn't have otherwise. This is an important point. We also need to consider Ofsted, and Ofsted have also picked up on, since 2011-2012, issues of the need to ensure that learning is authentic, that it's real, that it's actually valued by employers. In 2010-11, in the annual report, they very effectively summarised the difference between poor teaching and learning and outstanding teaching and learning on the right there, emphasising again similar sort of issues, similar sort of things about learners being inspired, thoroughly engaged and challenged, involved in their own evaluation and assessment. This was also picked up in the Wolf report in 2011, and concludes within that report that although there is general agreement about a lot of good things happening within the sector, there is need for significant change, not just minor change, but significant change. And really what all this points to is the need for a significant rethink about how we are encouraging our learners to learn. Work is changing. Learners are changing in how they're learning. They are using much more technology in an autonomous way, but the way we are teaching is changing too slowly. So therefore, we have tried to include within these Trailblazer standards a number of nuances. You can freeze this and have a look at it, but they relate directly back to the things we've been talking about: the need for inspirational learning, authentic learning, deep learning, using technologies, developing learner effectiveness, both as citizens and employees. So hence the creation of these Trailblazers. This has presented significant challenges to the leadership group. We're trying to define standards for a sector which is inherently disjointed, fragmented. It's a sector that describes broadly the same sort of roles with different titles. It has different language of teaching and learning, and different approaches, different values. We have been particularly exercised by a number of things which perhaps of no surprise, will be of no surprise to you. The role of the assessor, the fact that the assessors more often doing more than assessing, that they coach as well. The requirements for our vocational teachers to be more confident in English and use of technology, issues around parity of esteem within the sector as well as between this sector. Passion for learning and stretching all learners. So we have had to do this effectively for each standard on two sides of A4, something as the teaching role on two sides of A4, and it had to be in simple language. What we were actually told by Biz was it had to be in language that the apprentice's mum can understand. I won't dwell. So we've have proposed 4 standards. You will need to look at this, I think, in slow motion or freeze the frames a little bit. But just want to make the point that the level 3 and level 4 roles are somewhat differentiated in as much that we've designed them so that they are relevant both within the classroom, to take 2 stereotypical extremes, if you like. As we move to the level 5 and 6 role, we expect them to work across the sector. It's also perhaps worth noting that we have referenced in the initial teacher training qualifications, but at level 6 we will be inviting to consider perhaps something new, to meet this very distinct role whereby the teacher is now becoming a teacher of teachers and concerned particularly with the quality of teaching and learning within the institution. So please have a look at these standards, give us feedback, we'll welcome it. Thank you.